There's a comfort we rarely question. If someone is on the phone, they're not alone. If they're talking, they can still be helped. This case dismantles that belief quietly, because for 47 minutes, help was already listening, and it still wasn't enough. Act Y. The Call. May 13, 2008, is a day of celebration for 19-year-old Brandon Swanson. He's just finished his final exams for the spring semester at Minnesota West Community and Technical College. To mark the occasion, he drives from his parents' home in Marshall, Minnesota, to a friend's house in the nearby town of Canby. The evening is ordinary, filled with the easy relief that comes at the end of an academic year. But as the night deepens and the party winds down, Brandon begins the familiar 30-mile drive home. It's a route he knows well, a straight shot east on Highway 68. The time is approximately 12:30 a.m. on what is now the early morning of May 14th. The landscape of southwestern Minnesota is a vast flat expanse of farmland, sectioned by a grid of county roads. At night, under a moonless sky, it becomes a labyrinth of indistinguishable gravel paths and dark fields. Brandon is driving his green Chevrolet Lumina. At some point during his journey he makes a wrong turn. Instead of staying on the paved highway, he veers onto a gravel road. It's a simple mistake, one easily made in the disorienting darkness. He continues driving, likely believing he's on a parallel route that will eventually reconnect with the main highway. He doesn't realize he's heading deeper into a network of rural access roads, far from his intended path. The minutes tick by. The familiar landmarks he expects to see never appear. A subtle sense of unease begins to set in. The road is rougher, the darkness more complete. Around 1:54 a.m., the drive comes to an abrupt halt. While navigating the unfamiliar gravel, Brandon's car veers slightly off the road and the front wheels slide into a shallow ditch. The angle is just steep enough to lift the drive wheels off the ground, rendering the car immobile. His car ends up in a ditch. He isn't injured. The incident is minor, more of an inconvenience than an accident. There's no shattered glass, no deployed airbags, just the quiet hum of the engine and the sight of his headlights illuminating a patch of tall grass. The car is stuck, but intact. He tries to reverse, the wheels spinning uselessly against the soft earth. He is stranded. So Brandon does what most people would do. He reaches for his cell phone. He calls his parents. His father, Brian, answers the phone. Brandon explains the situation calmly. He tells his parents he's okay, but his car is stuck in a ditch and he needs them to come pick him up. This is where the night begins to fracture. Brandon tells his parents he believes he is near the town of Lind, a small community just southwest of Marshall. He says he can see the lights of a town and decides to start walking toward them. He asks his parents to drive to the parking lot of a local bar in Lind and wait for him there. His mother Annette stays on the phone with him to keep him company and track his progress, while his father gets in his truck to drive to Lind. The plan is simple, but it's based on a critical misunderstanding. Brandon isn't where he thinks he is. The lights he sees are not Lind. They are likely the lights of Marshall, or perhaps a grain elevator in the town of Taunton. He is miles away from his reported location, walking in the wrong direction. For the next 47 minutes, Annette Swanson listens to her son's journey through the dark. The connection is clear. She can hear the crunch of his footsteps on the gravel, the sound of the wind, the occasional car passing in the distance. Brandon describes his surroundings. He mentions passing fences and hearing the sound of running water. He seems calm, not panicked. He's just a young man on a long dark walk, talking to his mom. At one point, his father, having arrived in Lind and finding no sign of Brandon, begins flashing his headlights, hoping Brandon will see them. Brandon doesn't. Annette asks him to flash his own cell phone light, but his father sees nothing. The distance between them is far greater than any of them realize. The place is ordinary. The moment isn't. The conversation continues, a lifeline stretching across the dark fields. Brandon mentions he's cutting through fields now, trying to take a shortcut. The sound of his footsteps changes from the crunch of gravel to the rustle of grass and crops. His parents, now together in their truck, continue to search the roads around Lind, their frustration growing. They are in one reality, and their son is in another. Then at 2:41 a.m., after 47 minutes on the line, the call takes a sudden, terrifying turn. Brandon lets out a sharp exclamation. Annette would later recall it as an abrupt, "Oh shit," and then silence. The line goes dead. Annette tries to call back immediately, again and again, but the calls go straight to voicemail. Every attempt fails. The connection is severed. That single sharp curse is the last thing anyone has ever heard from Brandon Swanson. Most nights end simply. This one begins to divide between where you are and where you think you are. For hours, Brandon's parents search frantically around Lind, the area their son had mistakenly identified. But he is nowhere to be found. It isn't until the next morning, with the help of law enforcement and cell phone records, that the true location of Brandon's journey is discovered. His car is found abandoned in a ditch off a gravel road, bordering Lincoln and Lyon counties. It is 25 miles away from Lind. He had been walking in the complete opposite direction of where his parents were searching. The search now had a starting point, but the landscape was daunting. The area is a patchwork of agricultural fields, crisscrossed by deep drainage ditches and the winding path of the Yellow Medicine River. The terrain is uneven, treacherous in the dark. The last ping from Brandon's cell phone came from a tower near the town of Porter, confirming he was in this northern area. The data placed him within a 5-mile radius of the tower, a search area covering nearly 80 square miles of difficult country. It still feels safe. In the daylight, it's just farmland. But the search that unfolds reveals its hidden dangers. Law enforcement and hundreds of volunteers mobilize. Canine units are brought in. One of the search dogs, a trained bloodhound, picks up Brandon's scent trail from the driver's side door of his car. The trail leads away from the vehicle, following a gravel road west. It follows his path for 3 miles. The dog tracks him along fence lines, across another gravel road, and then leads handlers toward the bank of the Yellow Medicine River. And there, on the muddy bank, the trail goes cold. The river becomes the focus of the investigation. At the time, it was running high and fast due to recent rains. Did Brandon, disoriented in the darkness, accidentally fall in? His last words, "Oh shit," could have been a reaction to slipping on a steep, muddy bank. It's a plausible and tragic theory. Searches of the river were conducted, but the strong current and murky water made the effort incredibly difficult. No sign of Brandon was ever found in the water. And then the search, without knowing it, begins. What started as a son calling his parents for a ride home has transformed into one of the most extensive and baffling missing persons cases in Minnesota history. The initial search lasted for weeks, covering hundreds of square miles on foot, by air, and on water. Every barn, every abandoned structure, every culvert was checked. But as the days turned into weeks and weeks into years, the trail remained cold. The questions linger, suspended in the silence of that final phone call. If he didn't fall into the river, what happened? Could he have succumbed to hypothermia? The temperature that night dropped into the low 40s Fahrenheit, and Brandon was only wearing a light jacket. Could he have sought shelter somewhere and become trapped, or did he encounter someone else on that dark road? There is no evidence of foul play, but in the absence of answers, every possibility, no matter how remote, remains on the table. The search for Brandon Swanson has never officially ended. His parents, Brian and Annette, became powerful advocates for the missing, successfully lobbying for Brandon's Law in Minnesota, which requires law enforcement to begin a search for a missing adult under 21 without a waiting period. Every year, they organize searches, hoping to find a clue, an answer, anything that might bring their son home. But the fields and rivers of southwestern Minnesota hold their secrets tight. The night of May 14, 2008, remains a fixed point in time, a moment when a routine drive home dissolved into an enduring mystery, leaving only the echo of a final desperate word hanging in the dark. Here is the quiet truth. Everyone did what made sense. Brandon walked toward lights. His parents drove toward roads. Authorities searched logical areas. No one made a reckless decision, and that's why no one found him. Brandon vanished within miles of safety, near people, near roads, near help. Proximity didn't save him, because proximity without understanding is just distance in disguise. We believe that being heard is enough. This case proves something colder. Sometimes silence doesn't mean no one is listening. It means no one knows where to go. This is Armchair Files, and this was File 011.